Hi everyone, this talk is entitled Negation, Modality, Events, and Truthmaker Semantics. I'm Bernard Champollion. Now, it's well known that in event semantics, we take ordinary sentences like Joe leaves to denote sets of events, like in this case, the set of leaving events whose agent is Joe. And it's also well known that a sentence like Joe doesn't leave does not simply denote the complement of the set. That is to say, it does not denote the set of all events that are not leaving events by Joe, because there are plenty of events in that set that have nothing to do with Joe or with leaving. Instead, the appropriate thing to do, and what we are going to do today, is to assume that there is a function neg which maps the set of events denoted by Joe leaves to an appropriate set of events that can stand as the denotation of Joe doesn't leave. Now, the crux is, of course, to decide how to define neg. So now, in general, event semantics has plenty of motivation from a wide variety of sources, including, for example, spectral adverbials like for and hour, quantificational adverbs, perception reports, and causation reports. What we'd like to emphasize here is that for each of these types of sentences, we can introduce a corresponding example involving negation in the scope of these various environments. For example, we have negation in the scope of for adverbials, as in for an hour, John didn't sleep, negation in the scope of quantificational adverbials, in the scope of perception reports, and causation. And now, if we look at the most successful treatments of the ordinary non-negated sentences in these constructions, they typically assume that, as we have said at the outset, the clauses, the relevant clauses denote sets of events. And so if we can let the negated clauses denote sets of events as well, then these treatments carry over. Now, this in itself is not a new idea, but the conceptual and logical foundations of this approach remain well understood. Now, here today we built on previous work that we have presented at SALT in 2018. At the time, we assumed what we then called an axiom of negation. That is to say, we assumed that for every event predicate P, if this event predicate contains an actual event, an event that takes place at the actual world, then neg applied to P gives us a set that does not contain any actual event, and vice versa, it's a biconditional. So neg, in this case, is the function that we assume to be denoted by negation. Neg of P contains all events which preclude every event in P from being actual. Now, at the time, we took this, what we call the axiom of negation, to be an axiom. That is to say, we stipulated it. What Timothée is going to tell you now is how we're going to build on this work by avoiding having to treat this axiom as a stipulation.
Hi, thank you, Luca. So today we extend our previous work in multiple ways. We derive the axiom of negation from first principles instead of simply stipulating it. And we also show that our formalization of a negative event interacts smoothly with meology and also possible world semantics, which allows us to model modality. We've based our work on Truthmaker semantics. The main idea behind Truthmaker semantics is that a true sentence is made true by some metaphysical entities that are called truthmakers. Truthmaker semantics is very interesting from a logical and philosophical point of view, but is also useful in formal semantics. What we do here is first to identify events with truthmakers. Thanks to this move, we can import, among other things, the concept of exclusion from fine truthmaker semantics into Davidsonian event semantics. Exclusion is a binary relation of events that captures incompatibility, or roughly speaking, that stands between two events that cannot both occur because they contradict each other. Exclusion matters to us because we use it to define the neg function that we take to be lexicalized by linguistic negation, and we use it to derive the axiom of negation, now renamed principle of negation. Once this is done, we can provide an interpretation of propositional logic in which propositions are sets of events. And we show that it is hyper-intentional in the sense that two classically equivalent propositions may nonetheless have distinct denotations. This has linguistically observable consequences, in particular in relation to counterfactuals. Turning to possible world semantics, we show that our next functions behave as expected with respect to all possible worlds. Then we model attitude verbs and models in a way that corresponds to the idea that propositions are interpreted as set of events, and we show that they all interact naturally with negation. Let me conclude by mentioning some broader implications of our work. Our framework provides a solid foundation for the treatment of negation in event semantics. This proposal meshes well with previously proposed treatment of conjunction and disjunction in event semantics. This yields a logic for propositional languages that provides more fine-grained entanglement relations than classical logic does. For some of these relations, for instance, P does not entail P and Q or not Q. This places us in the same general neighborhood as situation semantics, but we avoid the problems that have beset many situation semantics, notably the difficulty to define negation. Thank you for watching us, and we look forward to seeing you at the poster session.